Life is more exciting when you explore the extremes. Let me explain. Use your imagination to think of something ordinary or normal, like something in nature. Let's say a hill, a puddle, or a tree. Anything will do because we won't let it stay ordinary or normal for long. Now, let your imagination take that ordinary something beyond normal to its extreme. So, if it were a hill, stretch it into a huge mountain range or grind it down into a single grain of sand. Expand a puddle till it becomes a deep ocean, or reduce it to a single drop of water. Multiply your tree and it will grow into an entire forest, or shrink it down to only a teeny tiny seed. Just as in nature, you can find or create extremes anywhere, even in music. Loud, soft, fast, slow. During this concert, we'll get to explore many of these musical extremes. Let's dive right in. Music must have magical powers because when we listen to it, we can feel joy, excitement, happiness, or sadness. Sometimes it's playful, sometimes it's dramatic. How does music do all of that? Well, the truth is, it's not magic after all. Scientists know it's actually sound vibrations that travel through our ears to our brains. And it's our brains that take these vibrations and create emotions and ideas in our heads. The creative people behind all of this are called composers. These musical masterminds write or compose music. They publish their final pieces, called compositions, and then an orchestra brings the music to life. The musicians in the orchestra know what to play and how to play it, because the composer includes specific instructions in the sheet music. So, by the time we listen to the piece being played, it sounds exactly as the composer wanted us to hear it. How do composers create music out of thin air? Well, you can bet they like to experiment with new ideas. And in order to do so, they often explore musical extremes. For example, if you've been listening to this music, and that's Beethoven, by the way, you may have noticed that it started out slow, low, and fairly quiet. Now it's changed into something fast, high, and loud. Think of these extremes as musical opposites. Another pair of opposite extremes is the rich, full sound of an entire orchestra versus absolute silence. You'll discover that composers enjoy this kind of experimenting as we listen to selections that play with musical opposites and extremes. And we mean extreme. You'll even hear a piece that was inspired by an extreme sport. Well, we'll get to that later. For now, hold on tight and get ready to explore extremes. Does this music sound fast or slow to you? got it! Fast! This music, called saber dance, was written by Armenian composer Aram Khachaturian for ballet. The funny thing is that a traditional saber dance is not meant for ballerinas at all. It's actually intended for rugged Russian men who swing their sabers, or flat-curved swords, over their heads as they dance. So, how do you dance a saber dance? Here's a hint. Remember to duck. The music goes on and even speeds up faster. It's no surprise that saber dance may have been Khachaturian's most popular composition. It's extreme music for extreme activity. Maybe you've heard it before. Perhaps watching a frantic chase scene from a movie or a cartoon. Even a circus might play this music during one of the more exciting acts, or when a juggler is spinning plates. The important extreme to listen for here is called tempo, or the speed of music. The composer uses tempo to instruct the orchestra to play faster or slower. And if you're dodging swords, taming circus lions, or spinning plates, you probably want to go fast, real fast. But wait, there's more than one extreme in this music. There are two sections of saber dance when the music doesn't speed up. In fact, it does the opposite. It slows down. It doesn't stop completely, but it does pull back from the fast-moving drive of the main melody. Listen to this excerpt and raise your hand anytime you hear the music slow down. Then, when it speeds up, you can put your hand down. Did you hear the two sections when Khachaturian slows down the sharp attack of the music? The tempo never stopped, but the melody certainly seemed to slow down. Maybe the composer did this to help the saber dancer catch his breath before the music springs back to life. Let's hear it again. This time, listen for the more relaxed melodies that are played when the music slows. Another extreme in saber dance is pitch. But it's not like a pitch in baseball. This pitch refers to whether a note is high or low. You're probably familiar with the notes on a scale. You know, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. When composers write melodies, they may take a simple step, up or down on the scale, to get from one note to another. Do, re, do. Sometimes they take a greater leap from a low note to a really high note, or from a high note to a really low note.
Do, 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 do.
A composer can use high notes, low notes, and any number of notes in between. As you listen to Khachaturian's saber dance, notice that his melody is always changing. Sometimes it hammers at the same note, steps up or down to neighboring notes, or slides to others. And when the melody actually leaps, it takes a big leap. Listen here to the difference between high notes and low notes in saber dance, and notice whether Khachaturian's melody steps to another note, slides to another note, or takes a great big leap. That was a lot of steps, slides, and leaps. Let's listen again, and this time, let's play a little game. Take a piece of paper and turn it sideways on your desk. Have a pen or pencil ready, and when the music begins, start drawing a line from left to right across the middle of the paper. This line represents the melody and how it will change. For example, when the melody stays on the same note, the line is straight. When the pitch moves up or down, so does your line. When it's higher, your line goes up. When it's lower, your line goes down. If you run out of space, start another line. And if you don't have a pencil or paper, use your hand in the air to trace an imaginary line. Ready for our saber line dance? Let's listen to the saber dance again and watch what happens. How did you do? If your line got crazy wavy, just blame that crazy music. As you can hear, Khachaturian's saber dance gives us plenty of opportunities to identify extreme high and low notes, and plenty in between. I don't know about you, but I can't listen to this music without hearing it through to the end. So let's let Khachaturian finish his famous saber dance. And while we do, remember to listen to the extremes in pitch and tempo. The third extreme composers consider is size. A full orchestra contains nearly 100 musicians. That's a lot of instruments. and you will find all sorts and sizes, both big and small, ranging from the very large string bass, harp, and tuba, all the way to the tiny piccolo, triangle, and castanets. The orchestra is so big that it's divided into 4 sections, or families: string, woodwind, brass, and percussion. Let's meet these different families by listening to musical excerpts of an Alpine symphony by German composer Richard Strauss. In an Alpine symphony, Strauss tells stories, paints pictures, and creates emotions. Through the music, you'll hear the adventurous tale of a mountain climber's memorable day. Meet him as he sets off at dawn to climb the Alps. But be careful! On his treacherous journey, he'll encounter a terrible storm before finally reaching the peak. But before we get to all of that, let's listen to the beginning of an Alpine symphony, which opens with the start of a brand new day. Have you ever seen a sunrise? Listen to this excerpt and see if the music sounds like morning to you. Did it sound like it was early in the morning to you? How did Strauss know which instruments would best create the feel of morning? How did he choose which instruments to tell the other parts of the story? To find out, let's meet the different members of the orchestra. Each section or family of instruments comes with its own distinct sound and personality. Let's start with the string section, which is made up of violins, violas, cellos, and basses, instruments that can sound soft and sweet or soaring and majestic. Listen to how the string section creates the chilly sounds of blowing wind and falling snow in this next excerpt from an Alpine symphony. See if you can tell which string instruments are playing. Did you hear the whipping winds or the sound of icicles dripping? Here, Strauss imagines a windstorm of snow and ice and uses the string family to paint this musical picture. The violins are out in front, but you can also hear the violas, cellos, and string basses. The woodwinds include the flute, oboe, clarinet, and bassoon. The sounds of these instruments sometimes have been compared to the human singing voice, carrying the melody over the quietest and loudest parts of a piece. Try to name the woodwind instruments you hear in this excerpt. Strauss uses the woodwinds to represent the climber in this story. You just heard the climber on his journey, struggling up the mountain thanks to the flutes, clarinets, oboes, and bassoons. The brass section includes horns, trumpets, trombones, and tuba, instruments with a bright sound often associated with courage. You'll hear them used in the loud, exciting parts of the music to create dramatic swells and sudden bursts of sound. Let's go back to the start of an Alpine symphony for a great example. See if you can tell which brass instruments are playing in this excerpt, as the climber has just set off and witnesses an incredible sunrise. Brace yourself. This is a real wake-up call. What a sunrise! Did you hear the trumpet's big, bold sound announcing the start of a new day? And if you were listening very carefully, could you also hear French horns, trombones, and the tuba? Finally, the percussion family is home to drums, chimes, gongs, cymbals, and whistles. Strauss also includes wind and thunder machines in an Alpine symphony. All of these instruments are used to provide pounding rhythms, booming drum rolls, and driving energy. Make sure to listen carefully. Percussion instruments are usually played at the same time as the other three sections of the orchestra. See if you can pick them out in this next excerpt, as they create the storm for our brave climber. So, which percussion instruments did you hear? The cymbals? The timpani? I know you heard the thunder machine. No matter how big or small an instrument may be, it takes a big orchestra to tell a big story. To climb this mountain, Strauss needs all four families: string, woodwind, brass, and percussion. But why did he want to tell this particular story? Mountain climbing was actually an extreme sport in Strauss's day, and as a boy, Strauss climbed the Alps. So when writing an Alpine symphony, he wasn't imagining what it was like. He was remembering it. When your favorite song comes on the radio, I'll bet you say, "Turn it up!" Or, on the flip side, if it's a song that you've heard too many times already, you probably shout, "Turn that music down!" Sound familiar? If so, then you've already begun exploring our next pair of musical opposites, loud and quiet. These extremes are simple for listeners, but for composers, loud and quiet are not something adjustable by a volume control. In fact, composers even have a special term when using these extremes: musical dynamics. By exploring different dynamics in a single piece, composers have discovered that these extremes make the music more expressive. Let's listen to an excerpt from Symphony No. 2 by Austrian composer Gustav Mahler, who is known as one of the great Romantic composers. Romantic here doesn't mean hearts and flowers. It describes a style of music that expresses big emotions and ideas. Symphony No. 2 is a great example. As you'll hear now, Mahler plays with extremes in musical dynamics to turn up emotion in the music. was pretty loud, right? But as you just heard, loud music doesn't always have to be fun and energetic. It can also sound majestic and quite serious. In Mahler's Symphony No. 2, musical dynamics play a huge role. These extremes help the listener understand the composer is tackling a very big and serious subject. Mahler is wondering if there is life after death, and this section represents a funeral march. Now that you know what the music is about, let's listen to that section again. Sounded pretty serious, right? But after all, Mahler is dealing with life and death. And what about the volume? Normally you'd expect a funeral march to be very quiet, but as you just heard, Mahler uses the opposite extreme. But it works here. He wants us to listen up, take notice, and pay respect. And the music's loudness does make us pay attention and creates a sense of urgency and importance. In this next excerpt from Symphony No. 2, you'll hear the music become louder for a much different reason. Mahler switches between quiet and loud to add suspense and drama to the music. See if you can hear the opposite extremes. Did you hear those sudden bursts of loud music? And how about the moment when the music got louder still? As you just heard, extreme shifts can make music unpredictable and, well, dynamic. And on the opposite end, quiet music can be just as powerful as loud music. We might expect quiet music to be soft and gentle, and it certainly can be. But quiet music can be exciting too. Listen to the opening of Mahler's Symphony No. 5, one of the most famous melodies the composer ever wrote. This music is believed to have been written as a love song. But as you can tell, it's not a happy one. Symphony No. 5 is more about the longing and heartache that can happen when two people are apart. Here, Mahler uses quiet sounds to be gentle but powerful. Now listen to what happens to these gentle sounds when Mahler changes the dynamics to the opposite extreme. By turning up the volume, but not tempo or speed of the music, the sense of heartache becomes more intense. That was definitely more intense, right? Okay, no more tears. Grab a tissue and let's explore how composers communicate dynamics to the orchestra. Composers write instructions in the sheet music so musicians know when to make the music loud or quiet. They use Italian words like crescendo, which means get louder, or diminuendo or decrescendo, which means get quieter. Piano means play softly, or pianissimo means extra soft. Composers will use forte when they want the music to be played loudly, and fortissimo for extra loud. Now that you know the right lingo, let's listen as the orchestra follows Mahler's instructions. He blends dynamic extremes for a dramatic end to the first movement of Symphony No. 2. Feel like waving the flag right now? That's because American composer John Philip Sousa really knew how to stir up a crowd. His famous military march, The Stars and Stripes Forever, is the perfect piece for us to review musical opposites and how composers explore extremes. We started on our musical exploration with fast and slow, and the composer's use of tempo. Remember that speedy saber line dance? Well, now, let's consider this excerpt from Stars and Stripes Forever and listen as the music changes from a bright, bouncy melody to something slower and smoother. Could you hear how the energy of the music changes each time the march's tempo grew faster or slower? And when the music did slow down, did you notice that the melody became more thoughtful? As you just heard here, changing the speed of the music can do a lot. Remember earlier when we examined extremes in pitch, or whether a note is high or low? You know, when we drew our lines that tracked all the steps, slides, and leaps in the melody from Sabre Dance? Well, Sousa also enjoyed playing with pitch in the Stars and Stripes Forever. Let's listen and catch a whole new set of low notes and high notes. The Stars and Stripes Forever moves so quickly. Were you scrambling to catch up with that melody? Let's try it again, now that you know what to expect. Ready? How did you do this time? Did you notice that the high notes were especially high and the low notes were really low? These changes in pitch definitely are extreme. Maybe that's why this march works so well with fireworks. You can practically hear rockets bursting in the sky. Another extreme we explored is size and its musical opposites, big and small. At one point during the Stars and Stripes Forever, Sousa hands the melody over to the tiny piccolos in the woodwind section. Even though the piccolo is one of the smallest instruments in the orchestra, it plays some of the highest notes and has a great deal of musical power. Let's listen to the small but mighty piccolos take the lead. See if you can tell exactly when it happens. Did you hear them? Impressive, right? Sousa will bring the piccolos back again during the big final moment of the Stars and Stripes Forever. Even though the entire orchestra will be playing at full blast, these powerful piccolos will still be heard. And before we hear that finale, also keep your ears peeled for the composer's changes in musical dynamics, or volume. The Stars and Stripes Forever is an excellent example of how music comes alive when it moves from quiet to louder, and then louder still. Take a listen. Wow! Wasn't that thrilling? And were you able to hear the piccolos over the rest of the orchestra? Sousa certainly knew how to use musical dynamics to get us excited. Now that we've explored all of these different musical extremes, you'll never hear music the same way again. The next time you take a listen, pay attention to how composers explore extremes. Ask yourself questions like, why the composer chose to feature one instrument over another. Or maybe one instrument instead of all of the instruments together. Does the music get louder as it slows down, or faster when it grows quiet? Composers experiment with musical extremes to make their music come alive. So enjoy these musical opposites and happy exploring. But wait! I want to hear that Stars and Stripes finale one more time. How about you?